Good morning, everyone. I'm Shahitha, uh, pursuing Masters in Microbiology in Central University of Tamil Nadu. Today, I'm going to be presenting about marine ecosystem, particularly salt pan zone. These salt pan zones are also known as saline lakes or salt flats. These salt pan zones are characterized by high concentrations of salt and limited fresh water. These salt pans occur in arid zones where the rate of evaporation is much higher than the rate of precipitation or rain. They typically occur in deserted areas where once endorheic basins or lakes were present, which dried up, leaving behind only the minerals. So coming to the geographical distribution of these salt pan zones, as I already mentioned, they typically occur in arid and semi-arid regions where precipitation rate is very lower and the temperature is much higher. And these areas are very prolonged to drought. And coastal areas where evaporation rate is higher and due to continuous influx of water by the waves, salt deposition on the coastal zones happen very frequently. And interior basins where there is restricted drainage of water, the water keeps accumulating in that particular area, and the water is being evaporated, leaving behind all the salt. There are hundreds of salt pan zones throughout the world. I have listed here some of the major salt pan zones. Coming first, the largest salt pan zone in the world, Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia of South America, and Etosha salt pan in Namibia, Africa. And India, we have one major salt pan zone known as Ran of Kutch in Gujarat, where the major source of salt cultivation is from this particular area. Coming to the characteristic abiotic factors of salt pan zone environment. Number one is high salinity. As I've already mentioned, these salt pan zones have very high concentrations of salt, even higher than that of typical seawater. This higher salinity is the major factor which poses a challenge for any organism that can live in this particular environment. The second one is the limited fresh water. As I've already mentioned, the evaporation rates are very higher, and the access to fresh water to the organisms living in this zone is very minimal. And extreme temperatures in these areas during the day, the temperatures can be very high, as high as scorching hot, and during the night the temperature can fall very low and could reach freezing temperatures. And nutrition deficiency is another factor, because there is a high concentration of salt present, which makes it difficult for other nutrients to be prevailed in that particular environment. Coming to the ecosystem of the salt plant zone, we have wide variety of organisms that can live in this salt plant zone, starting from plants, animals, and various other microorganisms. So coming to plants, most of these plants are termed as halophytes, which means salt tolerant plants. I have listed out some classical examples of plants which survive in salt plant zones throughout the world: alkali heath, alkali weed, big salt bush, horseweed, and salt heliotrope, then salt grass and piney rush. Most of the plants that live in this salt pan zone exhibit a similar mode of adaptation. Coming to water conservation, as I've mentioned, there is a limited access of fresh water. So they either develop very deep roots which can penetrate deep into the underground and access the water present in the underground, or they have very thick fleshy leaves which reduces the rate of evaporation. Second one is salt tolerance. So since these plants uptake highly saline water, they either have a mechanism to exclude these water. They do not even take the salt water. They just filter out the salt and try to take the water into their tissue. Or they have compartments in their system where they can store these salt molecules without those molecules causing any disruption in their normal metabolic processes. And as the temperatures are very high in these areas, they either have a reflective surface which reflects the heat of the sun rays, or they have a very thick waxy coat, which reduces the rate of evaporation. And one of the mechanisms they use to make sure that their future generations survive in these very harsh condition is that they produce seeds which can stay dormant for longer periods of time when there is a very unfavorable condition, and when there comes a favorable condition, they have the capability to germinate and propagate. Next, coming to the animals in the salt pan ecosystem, there are wide variety of animals, including brine flies, brine shrimps, waders, which are nothing but shorebirds, slender glass lizards, armadillos. Besides these, there are animals like antelopes, flamingos, and deers, which also live in this salt pan zone. The main reason why I have mentioned these five organisms are these show some modification to be able to survive in these uh, areas, whereas the other higher mammals do not show very significant adaptations to this salt zone. Coming to the adaptations of animals in this salt pan zone, water conservation. Since they have very limited access to fresh water, these animals have to conserve the water that is being available for them. So they have developed and they have adopted to excrete most of their metabolical waste within a very limited amount of water by excreting a very highly concentrated urine. Their kidneys have evolved to perform this function. Next is salt tolerance. Uh, Typically, any other organisms living in other zones than salt pan zone, when high concentration of salt water is being consumed, the body dehydrates very quickly, and they will face various other problems. To prevent this, the organisms which live in this salt pan zones, the animals which live in these salt pan zones, have the ability to tolerate this high concentrations of salt water even when they drink it, uh, by excreting these salt water through specified glands, or by simple excretion through urine. And behavioral adaptations, as we know, these salt pan zones can reach very high temperature during the day and very low temperature during the night. These organisms develop a behavioral pattern where they become nocturnal, and they hide in enclosures during the daytime, and go out during the night to uh, f- find food sources. Coming to the microbes in the salt pan ecosystem, we have a wide variety of microbes which live in the salt pan zone, and each of them play a very important role. Three main classes of microbes that are found in these salt pan zones are primary producers, which are nothing but halophilic algae and bacteria, which can be archaebacteria as well as halobacteria. Then decomposers, which can be bacteria and fungi, and nutrient for the main organisms which does nutrient cycling in this ecosystem is the nitrogen fixing bacteria. Halophilic archaea, or also known as halobacteria, are a group of archaea that thrive in these salt pan zones because they have the ability to survive in salt concentrations higher than 15 percentage. They are obligate halophiles, meaning they require a very high concentration of salt to survive. These bacteria pr- uh, these bacteria survive by producing pigments such as bacteriorhodopsin, which helps in energy production as well as protects them from this very harsh environment. Next comes the halophilic bacteria, Halomonadiaceae, which is an hypersaline bacteria found in hypersaline conditions. They play a major role in breaking down the organic matter present in this salt pan ecosystem. And cyanobacteria, these cyanobacteria are primary producers which can perform photosynthesis and convert the inorganic material into organic material, which the other organisms in this salt pan zone feed on. Next comes the halophilic fungi, black yeast and Trematostoma salinum. Both are fungi known to be extremely salt tolerant. And algae, coming to algae, we have Dunaliella salina, which is an green microalgae. They produce pigments such as carotenoids, which protect them from high salinity. And these algae, when present in this salt pan ecosystem, give a distinctive pink or reddish pink color to the salt flakes. And we have protozoans like Pleurostomum flagellatum. These protozoan act as an control for the halophilic bacteria since they feed on these bacteria present in halophilic bacteria present in the salt pan ecosystem. Coming to the importance of these salt pan zones for biodiversity, since these salt pan zones are specialized ecosystem, the organisms which survive, which live in these ecosystem, might not be able to survive in any other ecosystem, and these organisms, these species, are endemic to this particular salt pan zone. So the extension of this salt pan specific salt pan zone might lead to the complete extinction of the organisms and species that live in this specific zone. Next thing is these salt pan zones serve as a stopover point for migratory birds which travel long distance from one continent to another continent. Uh, they take a stop in these salt pan zones uh, to fill up with water and get some nutrition from these areas. And these salt pan zones are not isolated zones. They also the organisms in these salt pan zone and the nutritional availability of this zone also supports the nearby wetland and estuary zones and the organisms present in those zones. And what could be the possible threats to this salt pan ecosystem? First thing is loss of habitat and degradation due to excessive urbanization, agriculture, mining, and industrial development. These salt pan zones have been destroyed, which can lead to the destruction of the complete ecosystem. Coming to pollution, where urban runoff and industrial chemicals, which end up in these salt pan zones, do not have an exit since these are enclosed system, so they contaminate the salt pan zones and make it harder for any other organism to survive in those zones. And climatic change can increase the salinity of water and decrease the increase the salinity of water and decrease the availability of fresh water, which could become a very big threat to the plants and animals which survive in these ecosystem. Coming to the conclusion, salt pans are captivating ecosystem that are under increasing threat. However, major conservational efforts, researches, and public awareness has been introduced to prevent the extinction of this particular zones, because on an overall scale, the destruction of one ecosystem can disrupt the existence of all other ecosystem, and every other organism could potentially be in a threat. So, by understanding the challenges and opportunities in this salt pan zone, we can ensure to support this biodiversity and prevent this disruption of complete biological systems. These are my references. Thank you.